So I did a video about DC's villains, the villains that I think are going to kind of emerge into 2021, 2022, looking a bit further out. Who are the big characters that are likely to be a big deal in that universe? And what about Marvel? Where does Marvel stand with their big villains? Well, that's a much harder picture to talk about. So let's look into it. Hey everybody, this is Perch. I did a video on DC and their villains and kind of who I think the big names could be coming out in 2021, 2022. Some of that's a little bit of prediction. Other parts of that are maybe some wishful thinking of who I'd like to personally see, who I think would make some money for them and do some business, as they say. So, I settle on Deathstroke being a big name for DC, Sinestro, a couple others that seem like they've got some new aspects that could be brought in to make them big threats. But over in Marvel Land, it's a little bit harder. So the problem is the big top-selling kind of dominating force right now is House of X. It's or Dawn of X, I should say. It's the X-Men books, and Hickman is busy creating some brand new villains. We've got the Geezer Squad there, and we've got a couple other characters coming up. By the way, a lot of people were put off by the granny horticulturalist villains that got introduced in X-Men #3. I hear you. I understand how weird and off-putting that is. I would remind you that part of X-Men tradition, I guess X-Men lore, is that you've had, when the Reavers first came out, it was seen as goofy. When Mojo first came out, this big fat thing that did reality TV, that was goofy. The whole, not the Reavers, but there was the aging kind of soldiers who had turned villains. I forget their names. That was a thing with Claremont. There's a little bit of a history. In New Mutants, you had that crazy guy who would run around like a loincloth who killed Cypher originally. I forget his name. Nanny and the Orphan Maker. So it's not like the X-Men have this history of really kind of archetypical villains. They've had crazy villains before. So this is right in that vein. So it didn't bother me. None of that bothers me. It just, it is kind of what it is. So, but right now in Dawn of X, there's not a clear kind of big villain threat. The villainous threat is just, hey, all this cloning stuff, the bringing people back to life, what's going on with Krakoa, Apocalypse hanging out there, there's Mr. Sinister. The threat's kind of all there. I mean, if I had to pick a villain that's really going to emerge out of that, I mean, clearly something is going to go on with Mr. Sinister to bring things to a head. If they eject him from the island or whatever he's doing, I mean, he's doing his own thing. Apocalypse is going to be doing his thing. There's signs that there will definitely be some emergence. How long will the Magneto Professor X friendship hold? There's Moira herself could be villainous. I mean, there's a lot of things going on there that seem not wrong, or the villain threat is kind of from within. Outside of that, it's a mixed bag. And the problem it's a mixed bag is Marvel has this really unfortunate habit where they will all kind of use the same villains at the same time, but in completely different ways. It's like they go to an edit, it's like they go down for milkshakes. Yeah, sorry. And the editorial group goes, hey, what's cool? Ultron is cool. And they're like, oh yeah, Ultron is cool. Yeah, we all like Ultron. Now let's have everybody do Ultron stories, and let's see who can do the best one. And so they're like, okay, Squirrel Girl, you do an Ultron story, and the Avengers will do an Ultron story, and the Hulk will do an Ultron story, and we'll have the Wasp do one, and then let's see what happens. And so you get this kind of like they throw all these stories up into the air. The villain is written different in all of them, and as a result, you've had Marvel kind of blow through a lot of their top villains. Doctor Doom has been written completely inconsistently over the last 5 years as being kind of evil, and then on the path to redemption, and maybe evil again, and then maybe also on the path to redemption, and maybe arrogant, and what's going on. I mean, Doom is almost hilariously, you've got a storyline in Amazing Spider-Man right now with Doom, while simultaneously you have his solo title. So if I project 2 years in the future, who's going to be the big villain that everybody is talking about in comic shops? It gets really hard to kind of project that. Um, I mean, in Marvel, you have a bunch of really awesome villains. You have a good history of pretty amazing villains, and there are people like I mentioned, Magneto, Doctor Doom, Galactus in his own way, Ultron. You've got pretty amazing characters, and right now it's hard to imagine. Like when I close my eyes, who's the villain that we're all talking about 2 years from now? Who's doing it? Um, I can't tell. And unfortunately, it kind of feels like, with what, if I'm reading what Al Ewing kind of set up in Marvel Comics 1000, and the characters and the threat there, it's like kind of this from out of nowhere kind of threat. And by the way, I mentioned this exact line of thinking to a writer at Marvel like a month ago. And I got this chuckle of like, oh man, just wait till you see what's coming, man. You're so wrong. Just wait till you see what's coming. And I'm like, cool. I remember I said, I'm like, awesome. I'm glad to hear you say that. I can't wait to be wrong. I can't wait for you to send me mail going, man, did you see that? Nobody ever saw what was coming with MODOK. Huh? That was pretty epic. I'm just, please. Yes. I'm ready. My body is ready. Let it happen because the Red Skull probably. I mean, again, 2 years from now, the Red Skull's kind of doing something in Captain America. It's hard to tell where Ta-Nehisi Coates is going to kind of land that plane. It's the issues of Captain America feel just amazingly aimless. Like it Scourge is there, and they're trying to kind of tell a story about bad police and corruption, and it's like, I mean, Captain America's book is floundering, but I guess I have to start predicting something. I've hedged long enough, so I guess the Red Skull. Let's have the Red Skull back. Is a big villain doing some big mastermind thing. I mean, they haven't done much with him for a while, really. I would love. Here's what I'd love to see happen. I did this for DC as well, and I think both the companies are in the same boat where this is concerned. Is they don't have. They've either recently burned some big villains, or they've done storylines with them, and so the solo big villain has been played out. Even over in DC, Lex Luthor, and he had the Legion of Doom, but it was Lex Luthor who was clearly pulling all the strings there. So I guess with Marvel, what I'd like to see happen is kind of the Red Skull decides to create a new Masters of Evil, and which is not what he's typically done, but he's going to make a Masters of Evil. We're not going to have any kind of Loki or Shades of Grey type characters. We're going to have true full-on villains, and if they haven't been, villains of late, we're going to put the pedal down on villainy. So we're going to have, maybe we're going to have a reemergence of the Mandarin, but have him be super evil. We're going to have, let's see, who are some other ones? I mean, the Hood. You can do something again with him. You can do. I mean, you got to have somebody from Asgard, so maybe the Enchantress or Hela. I mean, you've got a couple others you can have there. I mean, the challenge is Doctor Doom's doing his thing. Ultron was just an Iron Man, and is fused with Hank Pym. And that whole thing is weird and doesn't necessarily connect the dots really well for anyone. I mean, other than that, you've got you just, I mean, like for example, Kraven the Hunter has been a hero in Squirrel Girl and have been a supervillain and dead in Amazing Spider-Man, and now maybe coming back again in another book, and it's a lot of a lot of noise and confusion. So let's go with Red Skull. That's a villain that has some mileage. I think the Mandarin is another one that you could dust off, do something with, and maybe that's a good case. I think let's stay away from trying to create new kind of evil, big kind of corporate like villains. I mean, the Darren Anger, Roxxon. I know there are some people who are enjoying that in the Immortal Hulk, but at least the commentary I get from customers and people dropping the title are that they do not like the way the book has taken a radical left turn into social commentary and politics, and that in a perfect, in a normal world, the Hulk would just wipe the mat with Roxxon and Darren Anger. So that's a bad matchup. So Red Skull. Let's get some real villainy, super evil, out for blood, bad Red Skull. No questions about it. There's no world where you can make the Red Skull like, well, he's a good guy some of the time. Nope, he's bad. So let's go with him. Let's go with Mandarin. And what do you think? So now it's your turn. It's Marvel. It's what do you, where do you see it going? Let me know in the comments below. Would love to know your thoughts. Like, subscribe. If you were notified before, please notify yourself again. I might have dropped off. YouTube seems to do that from time to time for no apparent reason. So cool. And thanks for listening. Follow me on Twitter, Comic Perch. And yeah, appreciate that you're here. Thank you.
So we've had a lot of talking in this comic. What do you think of comics that talk a lot?
They're not good.
Not good. You are not a Brian Michael Bendis fan. That's what I'm getting here right here.